Hello, everyone, and welcome back to Wondergoal, the soccer betting podcast from the Action Network. My name is Michael Lieboff, and joining me for this, our Champions League Match Week 3 betting preview is BJ Cunningham. And BJ, we have a clear headliner here. Real Madrid and Borussia Dortmund, the rematch between these two teams. And wouldn't you know, it's Dortmund at the top of the table right now, and I feel like we just do the song and dance with this team every year in the Champions League. Right now, we know that there's like a little bit of the dark arts and some voodoo to it. We doubt them, and now here they are, very early days, but they're sitting at the top of the table. On goal difference, they're one of, I believe, 7 2-0 teams, but they've got the best goal difference ahead of Brest, Benfica, Bayer Leverkusen, Liverpool, Villa, and Juventus. Those are the other 6 unbeatens. But they are pretty big underdog here at the Santiago Bernabeu. And you think Real Madrid could make this one pretty one-sided?
Yeah, this is like you said, this is obviously a rematch of the Champions League final last year, where if you look at the final XG, Dortmund did actually outcreate Real Madrid. If you remember, they kind of dominated them for the first half, and then Real Madrid started to kind of figure things out as the game went along, which is kind of what Real Madrid does at this point under Ancelotti. They're a very versatile tactical team in the fact that they just kind of mirror what their opponent does and try to, exploit their weaknesses. Dortmund this season, I think, is far worse than that team that went to the Champions League final. I think they're much worse coached under Nuri Sahin. I think he's trying to implement a new type of system with many different build-up structures. And so far, it's not really going well because they keep getting exploited in transition. If you look at their numbers in the Bundesliga right now, they're allowing 1.47 expected goals per 90 minutes. They have not played Bayern Munich, RB Leipzig, or Leverkusen. The best team they've played is Stuttgart, who put 5 goals past them. And yes, they can have the best overall goal differential in the Champions League because they played Club Brugge and Celtic. But even in those 2 matches, even the one against Celtic, like they scored a lot of low quality chances against that Celtic defense. And the biggest thing here for me is you have basically a full strength Real Madrid squad. And that Dortmund squad, the reason they had so much success is because they were able to play pretty direct, and Real Madrid tried to press them, which is not typical of Real Madrid. If Real Madrid just decides to sit back, play a mid-block, and just force Dortmund to play a lot of short passes through, and with Dortmund playing a high line as well, like that's a death sentence when you play Vinicius Jr. and Rodrigo and Kylian Mbappe. So for me, I like Real Madrid minus 1.5 at plus 115 here. Their numbers haven't been that great in La Liga so far. This is interesting, Michael, because we'll talk about Barcelona later in this show, but El Clasico is this weekend. So 2 huge matches for Real Madrid coming up here, especially with that loss to Lille as well. That kind of humbled them a little bit. So now they're kind of got to get things kicked back into gear here if they want to finish in the top 8. So very, very important match for them. And given how bad Dortmund really has been defensively in the one match, they've played one decent team in Stuttgart and they gave up 5 goals to them. And Real Madrid, I know they got dominated for like 30 minutes against Stuttgart, but in the end, they ended up creating 2.6 expected goals. So commonality in opponent, it's all Real Madrid here. So I like the minus 1.5 plus 115. I think that, this line closed at minus 150 on a neutral field. I think if you account for Dortmund being way worse and Real Madrid being better now that they have Kylian Mbappe, I like Real Madrid at minus 1.5 here.
Yeah, I think I'd lean that way. Or you can play like Real Madrid team totals as well. It does seem like this could end up being a one-way traffic, but we know how the song and dance goes. Dortmund just finds a way. It seems, especially in these stages of the Champions League. It's just who they are.
Yeah, it's Real Madrid too. Like it's dark arts versus dark arts here, right?
Yeah. As I say, I was just about to stop myself and say, actually, if you think about it, it's we're in the group, since we're technically in like the group league phase. You'd give the dark arts advantage to Dortmund here, but if this was a knockout round match, you'd give the dark arts advantage to Real Madrid. Speaking of dark arts, let's talk about Juventus up next. They're hosting Stuttgart. Juve, they've given up a goal since we last talked, but they still have the most bizarre There's two teams in the Champions League from Serie A, which is absolutely bizarre domestic league form, and Juve is one of them. They are unbeaten, 4 wins, 4 draws. Although 3 of the 4 draws are 0-0s. They did give up a goal 2 weeks ago to Cagliari in a dominant 1-1 draw for Juve. Now they take on Stuttgart team that I think I don't think they'll have too much trouble, like swatting aside. I think this is actually a decent win to nil bet, something like that. But the money line is cheap enough, I think, to back this Juve side, which we're falling more and more in love with every, I feel like, passing match. So yeah, Juve for me. What about you?
Yeah, I agree. It's funny enough, Michael, is that one goal they conceded was a penalty, so they haven't even conceded a non-penalty goal yet,
Right.
which is crazy to think about. They did concede twice to Leipzig in their last Champions League match, but that was off a Šeško banger, and they gave up a penalty. And then, of course, you'll see on the final XG they gave up a ton, but they were also playing down a man for most of it. But yeah, -120 is cheap here. Stuttgart's defense, when they have to face good competition, just continually gets worse and worse. They got hammered 4-0 against Bayern over the weekend, gave up over 3 expected goals to them. And even if you go back to their other matches against elite opponent, they obviously played Real Madrid in their opening match, gave up 2.6 expected goals to them as well. And the stylistic matchup here is, okay, Stuttgart is a team that likes to press high. They really like to get in your face, go man-to-man, and cause a lot of problems. But, for Juve, their buildup has been a lot different, and they're trying to utilize a lot more short passes. But I think you'll see them play a little more direct here against Stuttgart. Defensively, they're still playing Allegri ball. They're still playing incredibly compact. The one thing I'll say about Juventus going forward, and I think this is why maybe you're seeing this price as cheap as it is they lost their best defender, Bremer, to a torn ACL. So he's out for the season. So we're going to see over these next couple matches how they kind of are without him, because he's somebody who likes to invert into the middle of the pitch when they're in possession. They beat Lazio 1-0. They were up, Lazio got a red card in the 24th minutes. There's not really much you can take from that. But, the defensive metrics for Stuttgart are really, really bad, especially when they play good teams. So with Juventus being here at home, -120 is cheap. So I like them at -120 as well. Projected them -155.
Yep, the Juve train, get on board. It's quite a lot of fun to just watch this team post zeros. It's like having Greg Maddux on the mound or something.
Mm-hmm.
The other bizarre Serie A team in the Champions League is the next one we'll talk about. This match is taking place at Villa Park. Aston Villa is -165 hosting Bologna, +450 on the 3-way line for the Italians. The draw here is +310. Bologna is unbeaten in their last six matches in Serie A. 5 of them have been draws. Only one was a 0-0. Everything else was a score draw. They are 1-6-1 win, draw, loss on the season in Serie A. That is just so great. 9 goals scored, 11 conceded in 8 matches. The expected goals is right there too. Like it's almost very fair that this team has this crazy record. But I do think that makes them an interesting underdog. I wouldn't say they're my favorite underdog on the slate, but I will be betting them here on the road. I think that this just showing up and trying to just play Aston Villa to a grind is something that could work here. They were okay, I thought, against Liverpool in a 2-0 defeat. Then they had a 0-0 against Shakhtar in their opener. So I just think this is just going to be an absolute slugfest, a slog, and that's not how Villa wants to play. And I think stylistically that it leads to a very low event, rock fighty kind of game. And when you're dealing with an underdog at a price like this, even on the road in the Champions League where it's hard to get business done, +450 I think is a pretty appealing price on the Italian side here.
Yeah, I agree in a sense. I think Aston Villa is a little overvalued here, but I like under 2.5 at +110. This is just Vincenzo Italiano ball, Michael. It's just, he did this at Fiorentina for the last couple seasons where It's just low. They're so good at getting the ball through the first couple phases of buildup and then just settling for like low quality chances. So far this season, 0.08 non-penalty XG per shot. It's fourth lowest in Serie A. Last season, as Fiorentina team had the lowest XG per shot. But defensively, they're starting to kind of change a little bit. Like Bologna has the best pass per defensive action in Serie A, which is weird because last season they were playing under Mata. They were very like defensive structure. Let's just sit in. And you've seen that a little bit when they've played some of these better teams. Like they've been trying to press like worse off teams and they've been doing a decent job at it. But, in this type of match, I don't see how they don't just on the road, especially like you said, just kind of sit in and try to muck this one up. They're not really a good team playing in transition, but as on the other end of it, like Aston Villa, they got the benefit of playing up a man against Fulham for most of that match. The 3 previous matches before that against Ipswich, Bayern, and Manchester United, they didn't create over 1 expected goal in any of those matches. And even the match against Bayern, like they basically had to rely on just a couple transition attacks and really couldn't do anything because Bayern just smothered them with their press. So you could see a scenario where Bologna just comes on the road here, man-to-man marks them and just causes all sorts of problems. But I'm not sure Bologna really has the offensive threat to really threaten Aston Villa. So I like under 2.5 goals at plus 110.
Yeah, I think we're both kind of walking down the same path and going into just different destinations with our bets. A game that I don't think will play out very similarly is Atalanta and Celtic, because Atalanta is like the complete opposite, right? They've had 31 goals in their 8 matches in Serie A, which is quite a bit in any league, and certainly in Serie A. The expected goals is suggesting that's like a shade high, but not all that high. If you look at their combined XG for and XG against, it's like right at between like 29 and 30. So not too far off here. They are a big favorite in Bergamo at home, minus 230 against Celtic, plus 550 on the Scottish side, who are coming off a draw in Scottish Premier League over the weekend. The draw here is plus 400. I kind of want to go against Atalanta, but you can't let me keep betting Celtic. That's just a rule. So I'll pass.
I kind of want to keep betting them, but instead, I was actually looking at taking maybe. I don't know if I could. The thing with Celtic when they play some of these good teams, because they're going to play Leipzig next as well, is if they're going to play some of these better teams, you might as well just take them on the money line because it doesn't look like they're going to be covering any type of spread, 1.5, 2, or anything like that. I will say this, Michael. Against Dortmund, they did create 2.2 expected goals in a 7-1 defeat. And I think that what they learned from that, and they're starting to, find this is like being able to play direct and being able to exploit teams. And they have a lot of great Japanese strikers like Furuhashi and Maeda who can really cause a team like Atalanta a lot of problems. Atalanta is a team that is going to man mark you. They're going to come at you and they're going to put a lot of pressure on you. But when you go 1v1, what happens is when teams are able to play direct and more over the top, and you have good enough attackers to beat those opposing center backs in 1v1 situations, that's where you see them kind of getting exploited. They are conceding 1.3 expected goals per 90 in Serie A, where nobody really presses anymore, and nobody's really honestly that great offensively, other than a couple teams at the top end of the table. So, they've been good. They had a good performance, obviously, against Arsenal to open things up, and then they dominated Shakhtar, who might be one of the worst teams in this competition. But I like both teams to score at minus 145. I think with these Celtic matches, especially facing a team like Atalanta that's going to make the match very chaotic, I think both teams to score under minus 150 is good enough here. So I think the way to play Celtic is maybe just like play them to score, or these both teams to score, or money lines, because I don't know how many spreads they're really going to be covering if they continue to try to build out of the back and don't play super direct. So both teams to score at minus 145 for me.
It was a little tongue in cheek when I said that Dortmund and Real Madrid was the headliner. I think most people would agree that the headliner comes Wednesday afternoon, 3 p.m. Eastern time, when Barcelona hosts Bayern Munich at the Camp Nou. Barca plus 135, Bayern traveling plus 170. The draw here is plus 295. That's the direction I'm leaning. It's not something that I particularly feel great about one way or another. I do just think that these two teams, they kind of end up canceling each other out. Barca at home, they've been like astoundingly good through the first 10 matches in the in Syria, in La Liga, but with one little blip was at late September against Osasuna. But other than that, like they've been stomping teams, but I just think that they haven't, like, Bilbao out. I guess Bilbao aside, I feel like they haven't truly been tested yet. I don't like look too far into Girona. I mean, and I think that their league form has kind of bared that out. Villarreal's been pretty good, but I just think they're so much better than any of the opponents they played, that this is clearly the toughest test for them. They've been really, really good going forward. Really good going forward. Bayern obviously has been really, really good defensively in the Bundesliga. They've conceded 7 goals in 7 games, but the expected goals is at hovering around 5. I think this thing could just be an absolute stalemate. Like we talk about it a lot when City and Arsenal take on one another. That just it just becomes such an efficient game almost that it just gets bogged down in the details. And I think that there's a serious potential that that's what happens here. So the draw at like nearly 3-1 is really appealing to me.
Yeah, I'm kind of in the same boat. I do like Bayern in this match quite a bit, and I think this kind of along the same lines as you're thinking is I think this match should be projected closer to a pick'em than Barcelona being a favorite. Barcelona in what is supposed to be the lowest scoring league and among Europe's top 5 league are averaging 2.5 expected goals per 90 minutes. That's crazy. Like they're just putting up crazy offensive numbers. But you mentioned it, best team they've played has been Bilbao, and that was the second game of the season. And if you look at the XG, that match was actually kind of close. And what worries me here for Barcelona, well, let's just put it this way: there's obviously a lot of familiarity with Hansi Flick and Bayern Munich and that whole storyline coming into this. But Hansi Flick left Bayern in 2021, so it's been 3 years. So it's not like he just recently coached all of these players. Like it's kind of a little bit of a different team. Like he didn't manage Harry Kane. Musiala wasn't the player that he is right now. And the way that both these teams want to play is just controlling the middle. So that stalemate that you're talking about, it could just be both teams are trying to get like a 6v5 or a 5v4 overload in the middle. And just because the space is so compact, they're just not going to be able to play through there or really do anything. So I think this really comes down to is who is more effective in the wide areas. And if you know how Barcelona plays, they want to get at least like 8 guys in the middle. So when they lose the ball, they're so vulnerable in those wide areas. And Bayern has so many good wingers who can just kill you in 1v1 situations and get the ball to Harry Kane. And the thing of what still reigns in my mind about Bayern Munich is they have been tested. Like they have played a lot of good teams. Like they have played Leverkusen. They have played Aston Villa. Like they've gone against some of the elite teams and they have kind of dominated them. Yeah, I know Aston Villa beat them 1-0, but Bayern was completely neutralizing any type of chance of them building out of the back. Same thing with Leverkusen. Like Leverkusen took 2 shots and 0.07 expected goals for the match. Like they scored one from outside the box, and then Bayern just completely neutralized them and made them play very direct. So I know that Hansi Flick traditionally does want his teams to maybe play a little bit more direct, and I think that's Barcelona's best avenue. But the better defensive team by far is Bayern because Barcelona's without Araujo. They're without Ter Stegen. So I like Bayern here. I like them drawing a bet at plus 120. Like you said, Barcelona just has not been tested, and we're going to find out a lot about them in this match and then in El Clasico against Real Madrid.
Okay, that brings us to Diego Simeone's charges. Atletico Madrid, they're taking on Lille. This one is at the Wanda Metropolitano in Spain. Atleti sitting minus 210 at the time of recording. Lille traveling plus 550. The draw here is plus 340. Pretty big game, I would say, for Simeone's men because of the start, 1-1 or 1-0-1 win draw loss. I think they have to have this one circled. You got to take care of business at home in this kind of format, especially against teams when you're a big favorite. Um, that said, I just don't think either price is all that appealing. There are a couple underdogs that I like more than Lille. So I'm going to pass here. I do think Atleti ends up taking care of business at home, though.
Yeah, it's an interesting match because obviously you have Lille, who just came off beating Real Madrid, their rivals. But this Lille team they're just not as good as previous Lille teams. They've lost a lot of players. The new manager really hasn't put up great underlying metrics. And the interesting part about Atletico is their offensive numbers have been way down considering what they were last season. They're averaging 1.38 expected goals per 90 when last season they were at 1.6. So yeah, it's just a situation where I'm sitting here and being like, do I really want to lay, -1, -1.5 with Atletico, coming off of, they are a little bit more rested. Like that spot against Benfica was a horrible spot for them because they had played so many matches, and it was like the tail end of all these like strings of matches together. So a little bit better spot for them, but yeah, I'm not so confident laying this big of a price on Atletico and Lille. Their other performance away from home in the Champions League so far was horrible against Sporting. They got completely dominated by Monaco over the weekend up until a red card in about the 50th minute. And still, even after that, Monaco continued to dominate them. So, yeah, I do project a little bit of value on Lille, but I'm not confident at all in taking them. So I'm passing.
Okay, that brings us to Leipzig and Liverpool up next. This one in Leipzig, where Die Rotten Bolin are sitting as a plus 280 underdog in front of their fans. Liverpool traveling at minus 120. The draw is plus 310. Liverpool aided by a couple penalties in a really compelling match against Chelsea. That was a big one for them over the weekend. Now they travel to Leipzig, and I talked about Atleti being in a really big spot to get on the board or to get another win. This Leipzig team really is desperate, and I know they're an underdog and they're playing Liverpool, so you can't. And it's still early in the league phase. You can argue, but they're now 0-2, 3 goals for, 5 against, and a loss here. Like they could find themselves in pretty desperate situation in terms of the league phase. So I expect them to go for it, and I expect that to play right into Liverpool's hands. So I would actually lean towards Liverpool here as a road favorite, considering the stylistic matchup. Minus 120 is a little steep, I guess, for a road team coming off of a big win in the Premier League, but I don't know. I can't. I just would much rather be sitting with that price than the Leipzig price, considering how I expect this match to play out.
Yeah, I mean, Liverpool unders have been cashing at a crazy rate, Michael. Every single Liverpool
Yeah.
match in the Premier League has gone under the opening total. I think there's been one match where the total closed at, I think it was like a 3 or 2.5, where it either went over or pushed. But from the opening total, every single one has gone under, and I think that's going to continue here against Leipzig because Leipzig can honestly they're interesting this season because they're drastically overperforming their underlying metrics in the Bundesliga. I mean, so far they have only allowed 2 goals off of 7.8 expected. Like they have gotten very, very fortunate defensively throughout all of their Bundesliga matches. And if you watch them through, especially when they played Atletico, they got an early goal and then they kind of just sat in and they didn't even create over one expected goal for the match. Then even against Juventus, again, Sesko hit a banger. They got a penalty and then they created a bunch of chances after, Juventus sat in with 10 men. But in the biggest matches that they've had this season, again, against Atletico, 0.7 expected goals. Against Leverkusen, they scored 3 goals off of about 1 expected. I don't see how they're going to do that against this Liverpool defense. Like, once again, Liverpool allows under 1 expected goal against Chelsea. Like, if you take away that if you take away, we've had Liverpool Chelsea match, even with a penalty, had only 3 expected goals created in it. So under 3 at plus 105, I think is a little bit cheap because we've talked about Liverpool so many times, but they have control under Arne Slot. Like it's not the Jurgen Klopp Liverpool. They're not just going for it. Funny enough, though, Michael, is that this is Liverpool's. I don't know if you saw this, but Klopp has a new job, and he's the global director of
Yes, I did.
of Red Bull.
Red Bull.
Funny
Yes.
enough, their first Champions League match is against Liverpool, right? But so
Yeah.
that he'll obviously be in the stands. I would love to get the over under on camera shots on him. That would be a fun bet to make. Probably 20.5, I would say, somewhere around there. That would probably be a good line.
It's like yeah, Taylor Swift and the Chiefs player.
Exactly. That's exactly what's
that kind
of
territory.
Yeah, I mean, I projected closer to 3 here, but I'm just going to keep playing these Liverpool unders until they start, consistently having matches that go over 3 expected goals. So under 3 at plus 105 for me.
Cool. And very quickly, Man City are minus 1,800 favorites against Sparta Praha. 30-1 for them, 14-1 on the draw. You have some thoughts here, though.
I do. I think Sparta Prague is interesting, plus 2.5. But these money lines are crazy, Michael. This should be 40-1. This is stupid. There's no reason Sparta Prague should be 28-1 against City. Yeah. Please give us 45-1. Like, I think it's because of what Sparta Prague has shown in their first 2 Champions League matches. Like, they hammered Salzburg at home, and then they played a really, really good match against Stuttgart on the road. And, typically, you look back historically, this team, they're in the Europa League. They played Liverpool, and they just got absolutely hammered. But they did score in both of those matches. So I think Sparta Prague potentially plus 2.5, or maybe just Sparta Prague is plus 175 to score in this game, which I think is a pretty decent price. Again, this is a team that's been dominating the Czech league for a long time. They have European pedigree, and given the way they've played in their first 2 matches, City without Rodri, as you've seen, is pretty vulnerable. We had, I know Wolves didn't do much against them, but Fulham, the previous match at City, created 2.6 expected goals, consistently got numerical advantages in transition. I wouldn't be surprised if Sparta Prague gets a couple of those. I think City's just way more vulnerable and just has a lot less control if they don't have Rodri there. So I'll probably be on Sparta Prague to score at plus 175. 2.5, is that like plus 110? I wanted a 3. I don't think we're going to get there to get a plus 3. So instead, I think Sparta Prague to score at plus 175 is a lot of fun.
Okay. And City did give up a goal to Wolves. So, I mean, they keep conceding, and with have they kept a clean sheet without Rodri? I don't think so. Right?
I don't believe they have.
Yeah. So just keep that in mind. Okay. Real quick, you want to rifle through some other bets before we get to our underdog parlay? Anthony did submit one, so we have a 3-legger. Comes out at like 166-1, and then we'll get to our favorite bets after that. What else do you have on your card?
Yeah, Sturm Graz plus 1.5 at home against Sporting. The market loves Sporting. Two straight instances, Michael, where we've had Sporting against Lille went from like minus 130 to like minus 200. And then in their previous match against PSV, which was a pick'em, they closed at like minus 110. Like, they were, for whatever reason, the market just continues to love them. And listen, they were very good in both those performances, and they have a lot of good players. And Almiron is a very, very good manager. But 1.5 on the road in the Champions League against a Sturm Graz team that had actually hammered Salzburg in the Austrian Bundesliga, and it has been a consistent and a good team in the Europa League last season. Like, I think it's really, really high. Like, I only had Sporting at like minus 130, minus 140 here, so I think you're getting an inflated value on them. Inter minus 1.5 against Young Boys. I'll save that for the best bets segment. And I got to talk one Europa League match, Michael. I have to. I know we typically don't do that until we get to the knockout stage, but Jose Mourinho's Fenerbahce is hosting Manchester United, and Eric Ten Hag's job is not really on the line anymore after they beat Brentford, but a very, very poetic situation in Turkey. And I love Fenerbahce, draw no bet at plus 103. They haven't been that good in their first 2 Europa League matches, but it's not only a Mourinho revenge spot, it's a Fred, it's a Sofyan Amrabat revenge spot. So I love Fenerbahce, especially. I mean, listen, United was not good against Brentford. They haven't been good all season long. They were horrible. Like they went up 2-0 against Porto on the road, and then just continually got exposed in transition. Well, how do you think Mourinho teams play? Right, like it's low block transition all day, all day and all night. So that'll be the one Europa League slam spot. Mourinho, Amrabat, Fred, revenge game for Fenerbahce.
Okay. Um, we'll be right there with you, rooting on the special one. Okay, underdog parlay time. Like I said, Anthony did submit one. He likes, wow, surprisingly, a team he never bets on, Feyenoord. That's a big underdog. We the Nord. I feel like he hasn't bet them yet, but they are taking on Benfica. They're on the road. He likes them plus 460, so that'll get the parlay started. Feyenoord against Benfica. I was torn on a couple. Like I do like Bologna. I was a little tempted by Celtic, but I'm gonna go with Stade de Brest. Plus 550. They're at home hosting Leverkusen. Leverkusen is off to a great start, just across the board. Once again, of course, we know what they did last year. But there's something about this Brest team that is quite fun in the Champions League. They win a nail biter against your boy Sturm Graz, in which Sturm Graz at home on the road was down to 10 men, and it was a 2-1 win for Brest. And then they go on the road and thump Salzburg in a pretty impressive showing. So I think there's maybe a little bit of teeth to this team, more than we thought. They are sitting, like I said, second in the table to Dortmund. They will be at home. They'll be hosting a Leverkusen team that is much better than them, but the price tells us that. And plus 550 at home in the Champions League. And what I think, every season of every sport, there's always one week where, and especially in like weekly sports like college football or soccer, NFL, etc., where things kind of just typically go off the rails. I do think there's potential for this to be that, where there's just a bunch of crazy results coming off of an international break, some funny look ahead spots for different teams. But I do like Stade de Brest at plus 550, and as my underdog pick. What about you?
Yeah, this is going to be a fun one because I like Dinamo Zagreb plus 360 against Salzburg, the team you just mentioned. I think this price is really high. I honestly don't think there's really much of a difference between these two teams. Klopp's old buddy Pep Linders is now managing Salzburg, and they've been horrible through their first two matches. You mentioned Brest beat them 4-0. Sparta Prague beat them 3-0 in the opening match. Those were supposed to be their two easier matches in the Champions League. So now they're in desperation time. And what is happening is teams like Brest and Sparta Prague are just exposing them in transition over and over again. Dinamo Zagreb, the 4 goals that they've scored in the Champions League have all been off transition breaks. 2 came against Bayern and then 2 came against Monaco. And what I like about Zagreb is the first 2 matches of the Champions League, typically in Croatia, they will be the ones that hold 60, 65% of the ball. Well, they held under 40% possession in those 2 matches. So they got experience having to defend in a low block and counterattacking type scenario. And they've actually scored some goals off of it. And this Salzburg team is just not as good as the Salzburg teams you've seen in the past in the Champions League. They have a plus 0.7 expected goal differential in the Austrian Bundesliga. And their 2 biggest matches against Rapid Wien and Sturm Graz, they were beaten pretty badly. They're actually sitting in 5th place in the Austrian Bundesliga right now. So they're struggling to adapt to whatever type of system Pep Linders is trying to implement. So let's keep exploiting them. Let's go Zagreb plus 360.
Like I said, that one comes out 166 to 1. Okay, on to best bets here. We'll go first. I can't look away from this price on Juve. They're minus 115 on the 3-way line against Stuttgart. There's just something really special happening for the old lady right now. It's a crazy start to a season when you split your first 8 matches between wins and draws. 3 of the draws are 0-0. You've conceded 1 goal on the year in Serie A, and it's come via a penalty. Through 8 games, this team has conceded 1 goal. It's on a penalty, and they are 3 points back of the team in first. So it's been a bizarre season, but I still think there's a lot more room to grow for Juve. And the crazy part is like the expected goals they don't suggest like this is some serious chicanery or voodoo. Like this is a unbelievable defensive outfit. I think that they have their way with Stuttgart in this one, and I think at -120 or better, you're getting a really good price on Juve against a Stuttgart team that's been more mediocre than anything else in the Bundesliga to start. So give me Juve.
I'm going to go with Inter -1.5 on the road against Young Boys. I think that this Young Boys team, if they're not worse, they're the second worst in this competition. Coming into this, when the Champions League started, they were in dead last in the Swiss Super League. Well, they're up to 8th. They've won 2 matches all season long, and their defensive metrics haven't gotten any better. They're allowing 1.77 expected goals per 90 minutes domestically. Well, if you're that bad defensively against teams in the Swiss Super League, that doesn't translate well when you have to face elite competition. And that happened when they faced Aston Villa. They got beat 3-0, and against Barcelona when they got beat 5-0. So what do you think a team like Inter, who you can make an argument is maybe even better offensively than Barcelona and definitely better offensively than Aston Villa, what do you think they're going to do? I mean, Inter consistently over the last 3 years under Inzaghi has averaged over 2 expected goals per 90 minutes against teams in the bottom half of the Serie A table. They're one of the most versatile tactical sides in the entire world. And what's happening with Young Boys is they continually try to press teams high over and over again. They keep getting exploited by doing that. And then when they fall behind, well, they just get even more and more aggressive trying to get back into the game. And that just doesn't work against Inter. So I think the trend is going to continue of this team out of Switzerland just continually getting beat by multiple goals. So I like Inter Milan -1.5 at +105.
All right, that does it for match week 3 of the Champions League season. We'll be back again Thursday morning to look ahead to the upcoming Premier League weekend with our friend Sam Ingram from Betting Expert. And until then, best of luck with all your bets over the midweek.